So I've been diagnosed with a serious illness. I don't know, I might have to go to a nursing home or quit living off grid. I'm not sure. But I'm gonna show you around here for a second, then we'll get into that discussion. We were getting about 12 eggs a day. Well, we did for a few days, and then it went down to about 9 eggs a day. Carolyn's been making eggs every meal. Right now she's making hard-boiled eggs. Kind of neat to see colored eggs. I hope it doesn't steam up the camera. What we'll do tonight is she makes this meal. We're carnivores. She makes this meal called spaghetti. It has no noodles in it. It's just tomatoes. You know, we have our little bit of carbs and fruits. And then it's seasoned like spaghetti. Boy, it's a really good meal. She puts lots of cheese in it. Here's the cat. She's enjoying this warmer weather. She'll have to come inside probably next few days because it's going to rain, be cold. So this morning it was 67 degrees in the house, but it was only 57 outside, and I knew the temperature was going to go up, so I really debated on what to do about heating the house. I needed to get the temperature up because it was chilly in there, but I couldn't open the door because it was colder outside. So I went ahead and started the fire. After an hour or two, it got too hot in the house. Unfortunately, I just had to open the door. We try not to open the door because we look at firewood like you would look at your gas bill. You open the door, that means you're wasting energy. So I opened this door, but I left the screen door shut, and I just opened up the screen a little bit just to get a little cool air in there. Well, the cat instantly figured out how to get outside. She opened the door by herself. She just pushed it. The screen door doesn't latch. I've never put a latch on it. We only do that just to keep the flies out. It doesn't really fit anyways. It was a used door that we found, and I'm not going to make excuses about it. I've just never really worried about that screen door. So she came out on her own. I found that really neat. As the springtime comes rolling in, we have these mornings where it's cool in the house and you'd like to warm it up. I am going to refrain from using the buddy heater. Last year we used the buddy heater during this season where it was kind of cool but not too hot, cold, and it got hot. And I'm gonna really try to keep from doing that. Now that we have dry firewood, this should be easier. Last year we had to burn the fire pretty hot so the creosote wouldn't build up in the chimney. We did better last year, don't get me wrong. Last year we had a lot of dry firewood, but towards the end of the season we started getting back into that wet stuff, and I just didn't have a choice. I had to run the buddy heater so I didn't get the chimney filled up creosote. This year we won't have any problems, but we got to figure out how to keep it cooler. I mean, it gets up to 100 degrees in the house. So Carolyn likes making kindling. I don't know why, but she really enjoys making it. Pet the cat for a minute. I didn't mean to disturb her. What we're gonna do is we'll just take a big handful of this and throw it in the wood stove. And if it doesn't get warm enough in there, then we can throw another handful in there. And then we'll just kind of feed it slowly. That way it doesn't get too hot in the house during this transition from winter to spring. I don't know, the fall time doesn't seem to be quite as bad. In the fall, I think you're used to the hot temperatures from the summer. So you light the stove and it's cold and you're okay with it. But as winter goes on, you start getting used to the cooler temperatures. And then when you transition into spring, it's tough with that wood stove. I'm not complaining. I'm just throwing out that this is one of the things that we struggle with living off grid, is this transition. But every transition is tough for us because you got to reacclimate. When we're getting ready for winter, I got to make sure the water tank doesn't freeze. So as you know, Carolyn and I have switched to a carnivorous diet, and I feel like $1 million now. I'm 51 years old, and I know, oh my God, you look a lot older than you are. I'm 91 years old and I look younger than you. I get that all the time. I had a pretty hard life. I've told you that I had lots of stress in my previous jobs. I ran my own company. I traveled the country. I ate garbage my entire life. When you live in hotel rooms, you eat McDonald's, and my favorite was Hardee's, the $6 burger, and the French fries. I also smoked since I was 9 years old, off and on. I mean, I couldn't smoke that consistently when I was a child, but I did smoke frequently, a lot more than I should have. And by the time I was 15, I was smoking quite a bit. So I smoked until I was in my 20s. I quit for a couple years and then I started back up. And I only stopped smoking 10 years ago or so. I went to the vape and I vaped for a while. I know that's terrible, but it helped me quit. I was able to continuously reduce the nicotine. The one thing that I've always done well is I've only drank two things. I don't drink a lot of soda. I don't drink a lot of alcohol either. Since my 20s, I would say in my 20s, I consumed a considerable amount. I was in the Navy. I mean, of course, that's what you were supposed to do. But then when I started raising my daughter, I didn't drink hardly at all. And now that I'm with Carolyn, we don't drink at all, period. We haven't had a drink since her and I met. So really the only thing I drink is water and coffee. Now I know a lot of people have their opinions about coffee, and I probably drink more coffee than I should, but I also drink a lot of water. Well, in the wintertime, I probably drink 4 bottles of water, soda bottles worth of water. And then in the summertime, probably 8 soda bottles of water, you know, just a water bottle. I've never drank a lot of garbage, but I have had a pretty unhealthy life. And then we became nomads, and as nomads, we tried to eat healthy. But the problem is, I wasn't exactly sure what healthy was. We'd buy meat, but then I would always say, well, why don't we get, you know, breads? And Carolyn was so against carbohydrates. She was a big into vegetables. Now, I'm just the opposite. I didn't know much about carbohydrates. I'm gonna explain this in a little bit, but I was always a big meat eater. I had this theory, and I'm not completely against this theory still yet today. I had this theory that people with O blood types, I did a very small sample size throughout my life, but people with O blood type, I have found, tend to be more meat eaters than vegetable eaters. They tend to like eating meat more than vegetables. Now, what got me to this idea was my daughter. I met my daughter when she was 1 year old. I told you this. I adopted my stepdaughter. I forget what blood type she had. I honestly can't remember, but she had a different blood type than me. Maybe it was A, I don't know what. And she really didn't like to eat meat as a child. As a toddler, she would love vegetables. I mean, she ate all kinds of gross vegetables. And I say gross, I mean, I remember one time she had a piece of meat, and we cut it up, and she didn't want to eat it, so I guess she somehow or another hid it all in the VCR. And so I always had this theory that's what it was. So when I met Carolyn and she ate vegetables, my theory popped in. Well, I like meat, she likes vegetables. But she always complained about carbohydrates, and I never understood it. Now, when we talked about carbohydrates, so when she would talk about carbs, I always envisioned Dr. Atkins. Dr. Atkins was against carbs. And for some reason, I thought he died because he wasn't eating carbs. Now, I've mentioned this in my videos before, and people will tell me, well, of course he died from not eating carbs, but that's not true. I actually forget what he died of, but it wasn't from carbs. It had some other problem or fell down. I mean, it was something silly. When she would talk about carbs, I'd be like, well, okay, Dr. Atkins died because he didn't eat them, and she would argue, and I mean, we don't argue, don't get me wrong. But eventually I started listening a little bit. Telling me, and I found a doctor on YouTube, and he explained it in terms that made sense to me. I'm not saying Carolyn didn't make sense, I wasn't understanding. I think what he said was, and it really triggered something in my head, was carbs turn into sugar. All carbs. There are people in my comment section that will argue that no, there's 2 types of carbs. There's processed food carbs, and then there's regular carbs, and regular carbs are good for you. No, carbs are carbs. A carb is sugar. Doesn't matter where it comes from. It comes from a potato, or it comes from a noodle, it's still a carb. And so that turns into sugar, and we all know sugar's bad for you, so if I told you, hey, here's a teaspoon of sugar, eat it, and it's good for you, you would argue. But corn, potatoes, all of it's got carbs in it. And so she convinced me that we need to get off carbs. Well, then I started watching this doctor, and he convinced me we need to get off carbs. So we started thinking about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And last spring, we grew a garden. Then we started seeing that vegetables had carbs, and we found out that vegetables are poisonous. All vegetables have a poison in them to protect themselves, just like a poisonous berry has chemicals in it to protect itself from being eaten by an animal. All vegetables have a poison in them to protect themselves from being eaten. What this poison does is it gives you inflammation, just like carbs. Carbs give you inflammation. So does vegetables. And so when you have an arthritis shoulder, inflammation. When you have inflamed bronchial tubes, asthma, all this comes from carbs. So when I stopped eating carbs, I got healthier. I feel healthier. That is the key. My shoulder is better. It's gone. Carolyn's back pain is gone. Her anxiety is gone. My asthma is gone. And so my quality of life has went up. Even with Carolyn's back pain and anxiety has increased my quality of life, because when she's anxious, it's hard to be around her. She's angry. It's just a mental illness. But the same is true for her. Her quality of life has went up. I can split firewood, so now she can have a warm house. I can do more chores. I'm not just tossing and turning all night, keeping her awake because I can't sleep on my shoulder. So both of our quality of life has went up. Our peace of mind is better. No stress now. I don't have to worry that Carolyn's back is going to give up. She was just talking today, and she says, oh, my back is so much better, my ankles, everything's so much better. And we're both losing weight. Now this is interesting. What I find interesting is when I say we're losing weight, we physically are losing body mass, but our weight hasn't really declined a lot. Now this makes sense if you really think about it. Muscle weighs more than fat. So we're getting rid of fat, getting smaller, all the while our weight is staying about the same. Carolyn's got a favorite pair of pants that she's wearing right now, and they keep falling down on her now. So she's getting smaller. We're both getting smaller. My man boobs went away. That was a big thing for me. So there's 4 things that got better when I stopped eating carbs. My shoulder, my lungs, man boobs went away, and I'm no longer hypoglycemic. Blood sugar crashes, and so I would always have to have peanut butter around. I'd have to eat a tablespoon of peanut butter to feel better. But here's the problem, is the doctors on YouTube, I'm being sarcastic, the commenters who pretend to be doctors are telling me, you look terrible, your face, you got sunken eyes, and you look terrible and you're gonna die. And so yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to go to a nursing home because of my face. Well, when you think about it, I've lost weight. I've been comparing a video recently, in these current videos, about the day we moved onto this property. And if you look at my face, it's fat. I can see it, it's just fat. And so I got chunky cheeks. What people are saying is healthy isn't. I was fat, and people are saying, well, you should look at your first videos, you look so much better. I think in America, we have decided now that being fat is healthy. I've lost weight. Now also, the other thing, my face has lost a lot of weight because I Googled this, because I'm getting older. And as you get older, your face loses a lot of fat. Clumps up, does different things. I would rather die tomorrow eating the way I'm eating on a carnivorous diet than eating the way people tell me I should be eating and live for a long time. Just thinking about being able to breathe is one reason why I will continue the carnivorous diet. If I die tomorrow, at least I will be breathing well while I'm dying. And that's just the way I see it. I'm quite happy with it. So even if I'm wrong, and the carnivorous diet is terrible, I feel better. And that's important to me. Quality of life is better than length of life. I've determined that because of the breathing, I couldn't handle it. So if you click this up next box, take you to a video where I was talking about the water problem we're having. So I hope I can inspire you to eat healthier so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.